Hey everybody, Michael Robbins, September 20th, 2021. Been tracking the market's expectations around COVID, and we're going to start just with some historical context. Uh, I realize nobody's watching this. It's being done for historians. Like this fellow who says that this is the pandemic that I'll be studying and teaching to the next generation of doctors and healthcare students. So maybe there's some economics student in the future who's going to want to know what was going on. Of course, all the articles will be available, but kind of interesting to take a snapshot of somebody who's living through it right now. Let's kind of see where we are. This is a S&P. Market Watch likes to reset itself to a one-day chart. Move it back to 3 days. So this was the onset of COVID and the major market correction in March. A pretty steady march back. But there are some new concerns up here, and it's going to be interesting to see who's right about where we go from here. Number of headline news. I thought this was really fascinating. You see Israel getting out front, followed by UAE. Early adopters in the US kind of kept it up here in the top 5. But, when we start talking about vaccine hesitancy, you see the US dropping, doesn't recover to the top 10. Canada actually hangs in there, though. So, you might be thinking, what's this thing about vaccine hesitancy? This is probably just, one of many headlines. But it's right here at the top. Daughter blaming her father's death on the misinformation, and it's really sad when you hear the final words to my stepmom was he wished that he was vaccinated, and attributing it to a certain reporter, Tucker Carlson, who kind of feeds into COVID vaccine hesitancy. So it wasn't surprising to see this. As I showed you, we just had a pretty major dip, 2 or 3%. And actually, above here, it attributes it to a Chinese real estate developer, some call the Lehman Brothers of China, and concern about, Congress raising the debt ceiling in time. But here we are again with COVID, Delta variant, somehow affecting the market, the expectations, right? The pace of recovery, inflation, monetary and fiscal policy, and this was all the expectation on, well, what's the Fed gonna do, and how bad is it gonna be? But coming back to the vaccine interest, right?
And 54% of people support mandatory proof of vaccine to enter indoor establishments. The survey found a majority of respondents support mask and vaccine mandates for schools and businesses.
So that's great. It's a majority, but here is still a very large portion of the segment that is opposed to vaccine mandates. Well, COVID vaccine mandates. There have been plenty of vaccine mandates that have just become a part of our culture, and we'd expect that eventually COVID would also be, just as natural as a, polio or measles vaccine. But, here in September 2021, almost a third of the population, or about that, is opposing even mask mandates. The Economist breaks it right on down. Treating the unvaccinated costs $3.7 billion, or $20,000 per patient. And they've got another piece. Yes, the COVID true death toll. And of course, they've got their disclosures at the end of how their research could be wrong. But I think essentially what it's doing is it's looking at, how many people are usually dying in these different countries every year, and then how many have actually died. And so I think this is global, right? So saying this is the official death count, but this is, the actual number of deaths that are attributable to, COVID directly or indirectly. That's what they call them, excess deaths over what the nation would ordinarily have. So, not surprisingly, in the United States, right, we kind of have good information correlation, and there's not a great deal of excess deaths. But, the Russia's official account of COVID deaths is way below what the Economist thinks that actually was. And a lot of data here. Always really good stuff. Yeah, then it goes into its disclaimers. So it would have been impossible to guess. Right now, this is just Washington State here. Hospital resource use. That here we are, 6 months, 5 months after the vaccine became readily available. Would you guess 5 months after the vaccine became readily available for people over 12 that we would have peak hospital utilization? Right, because this is going back, here's March, right, 2020, when things are really breaking out, kind of get under control. Last Christmas, people start going out and infecting each other again, so we, get down off of that hump. And, this is, I guess the impact of the Delta variant, COVID fatigue, and just a whole bunch of that. So I've got this bearish piece by Morgan Stanley, but there was something that was a little more bullish. I'd like to be able to find it. Yeah, I think this is it here. Okay, so Eddie Gabor, Key Advisors Managing Partner. He's making the call that this is a great buying opportunity, and is not really too pessimistic. That's why they're buying the dip. And it's going to be a great rally for the rest of September and possibly the beginning of October. On the other hand, Morgan Stanley.
Jason Katz joins us this morning. All right, Jason, let's get to it. I've got several.
About, I wonder if these are aftermarket futures. Wow. If these are aftermarket futures, the market just came down 2%. Like it might be giving up another 2%. Right. So Morgan Stanley is saying that 20% pullback is becoming more and more likely. Right. It laid out these two near-term paths, fire and ice, which actually are both bad. The fire is a 10% correction, or is attributing a certain reaction from Fed policy. And the ice is a 20% dip, caused by earnings revisions, deceleration in the macro data going forward. And then they start saying that the ice is starting to look more likely than even the fire. But it makes a good point. I think it's down here exactly. The index is up 102% off its pandemic low, right, which was March 2020, through September 2nd, 2021. So, yeah, as we saw in that original chart, the market has been doing really great after that, initial March 2020 sell-off, and yet now we're getting, it seems like we're getting another reality check. So be very interesting to see how these things pan out. We'll see you next time.